Today's mindful moment, packed with insights but designed to fit into your busy life. One deep dive at a time. When we think about North Korea, it's often this kind of monolithic image.
Yeah.
It's all about politics and economics and kind of the big picture stuff. But what about the people, like the actual human experiences of living in a place like that?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. It's about looking beyond the headlines and the kind of the political analysis and really getting into the nitty-gritty of what life was like, especially during this really difficult time in the early 1990s in North Korea.
Yeah, the early 90s were really a breaking point for them. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and that support that they had relied on for so long just vanished. And the impact on everyday life was huge.
Oh, it was immense. The economy went into a total tailspin. Imagine like widespread power outages, food shortages becoming the norm. And, this was a country that was already struggling.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that. And we're going to delve into all this through the incredible stories that Barbara Demick shares in her book, Nothing to Envy. She brings to light the lives of these individuals who lived through this tumultuous period, like Miran.
Miran is a fascinating character, right? She was a kindergarten teacher in this kind of bleak mining town, and her story really gives us a glimpse into the education system, the propaganda, and just the sheer struggle of daily life. Imagine trying to teach young kids about national pride and achievement when they're literally facing starvation.
Oh, the dissonance there is just heartbreaking. And we also get to know Yon Sang, Miran's boyfriend. He's a bright, promising university student in Pyongyang, and their relationship really highlights the complexities and, frankly, the restrictions on even something as fundamental as love and romance.
Yeah, their story really gets to the heart of how political and economic realities shape even the most personal aspects of our lives, how even something as universal as young love isn't immune to these larger forces. And, when you think about the physical environment that Demick describes, it's really striking.
It paints such a stark picture, right?
Yeah.
Imagine a world where most of the time it's pitch black at night because of constant power outages. Housing is basic and uniform, stretching across the landscape. There's hardly any private transportation. It's such a different reality from what most of us are used to.
Yet within this, what we might perceive as a very bleak environment, there's this incredible resilience and this quiet beauty in the way people find connection. Miran, for example, she describes these nighttime walks with Ginseng as incredibly happy moments. Just the simple act of talking under a dark sky, it's really powerful. What was your takeaway from that? What did that tell you about the human spirit, even in such a restricted place?
Honestly, it's a huge reminder that even in a country so often portrayed as, just a place of suffering, that individuals are still individuals, right? They seek out and find connection. And often it's those tiny, unexpected moments that bring them most joy. It makes me think about how adaptable humans are, how we find ways to cope and even thrive in incredibly challenging situations.
It's that adaptability, that resilience that you're talking about. It really resonates with me, too. It makes me think about have you ever come across that YouTube channel, Mindful Moments? They do these really interesting analyses of audiobooks using AI, and they often explore these themes of human resilience, how people adapt in all kinds of tough situations. I think you might find it pretty fascinating.
Oh, I'll definitely check that out. Thanks. Now, getting back to Miran, her story doesn't end in North Korea. She eventually defects to South Korea, and her determination to pursue a graduate degree in education, despite all the trauma she's endured, is just remarkable.
It speaks volumes about her strength and her belief in the power of education, right? Even after experiencing such hardship, she still sees learning as a path to personal growth.
And the bond between her and Ginseng is just incredible. I mean, their courtship in North Korea was so different from what we're used to in the West. They went years, literally years, just holding hands before even a kiss. It really highlights the depth of their emotional connection.
Yeah, in a society where physical intimacy was so restricted, their emotional bond really took center stage. And what I find so interesting is how those constraints almost amplify the importance of other aspects of the relationship.
Yeah.
All that conversation, sharing their hopes and dreams, supporting each other, it creates a really powerful connection.
It's not just about personal relationships, right? We can't forget the devastating impact of the economic collapse on everyday people. The state could no longer provide for its citizens, and people like Mrs. Song had to find totally new ways to survive.
Mrs. Song's story really stuck with me. The public distribution system failed, leaving her family with absolutely nothing. So here's this woman in her 50s, no prior business experience, and she starts making and selling cookies. Talk about resourcefulness.
Oh, it's incredible. She's such a testament to human ingenuity, right? Like,
Right.
even in the most rigid systems, there are these cracks, and people find ways to adapt. It makes you wonder, how much untapped potential is there in a population that's been so suppressed for so long?
If
What other instances of this kind of, like, informal economy springing up did you find in Demick's book?
There are quite a few, actually. I mean, necessity really becomes the mother of invention in a situation like that. But, it wasn't just about individuals trying to make ends meet. Demick also talks about these small acts of kindness, these little moments of humanity that really shine through despite the widespread desperation, like neighbors sharing their meager portions of porridge with orphaned children, for example.
Yeah, those little gestures are so powerful. It's like this refusal to be completely overwhelmed by the hardship, this clinging to a sense of shared humanity. It makes you think, though, given how restrictive things were, what allowed those acts of kindness to persist? Was it just pure instinct, or were there, like, subtle social structures that encouraged it?
That's a great question. I mean, those acts of kindness, they're often overlooked, but they're so important for understanding the social fabric in times of crisis. It shows this recognition of interdependence, even when resources are incredibly scarce.
It's almost like a quiet rebellion, in a way, this defiance of the dehumanizing forces at play. And even Junsang, who's so focused on his studies and his future in Pyongyang, has this shift in priorities.
Oh, absolutely. It's during his permitted trips home, driven by this longing to see Miran, that he really starts to understand how crucial their relationship is. He actually begins to prioritize that human connection over ideological pursuits, which is pretty profound in a place like North Korea.
Right, it challenges that whole notion of the collective good outweighing individual needs. But it's important to acknowledge that Nothing to Envy doesn't shy away from the really dark side of what was happening in North Korea. The famine, the constant surveillance, public executions, people driven to desperate measures. It's all part of the story Demick tells.
It's a crucial part of the context, for sure. It's important to remember that these individual stories are unfolding against a backdrop of immense suffering. But by focusing on these specific individuals, we get a glimpse into the human response to those horrific conditions. We see this remarkable capacity for finding meaning, for forging connections, and for trying to exert some agency even within a totalitarian regime that's facing widespread starvation.
It's like Miran's memories of those walks with Yun Sang under the darkened sky. Such a simple image, but it says so much about their ability to find intimacy and joy in a world that's been stripped bare.
It's about holding on to those little glimmers of hope and beauty, even when surrounded by darkness. And their physical intimacy progressing so slowly, so deliberately, it emphasizes how precious human connection becomes in a place where so much else is denied.
And we can't forget Mrs. Song, this unlikely entrepreneur. She's using her cooking skills, something so basic and domestic, to find a way to feed her family. She's navigating this complex, emerging informal market, and her story really embodies that human spirit of resourcefulness.
It's like this hidden potential being unleashed when traditional systems collapse.
Yeah.
These skills she had honed in the private sphere suddenly become essential for survival. That's a really powerful testament to human adaptability.
And Junsang's decision to leave everything behind in Pyongyang, to risk it all to find Miran ultimately defecting, it speaks volumes about the strength of their bond. That testament to the power of love, how it can outweigh even the most daunting risks.
In a society that's designed to prioritize loyalty to the state above all else, his choice really highlights the fundamental human need for love and belonging. Those needs, they transcend political systems, ideological boundaries. They're just part of what makes us human.
So through these stories, we see these incredible themes emerge. The resilience of the human spirit, the will to survive, the constant search for connection and meaning, even when surrounded by darkness. These little acts of adaptation and resistance, they're happening all the time, even in the most oppressive environments.
And what's really striking is that while these stories are rooted in the specific context of North Korea, they offer these profound insights into human nature. They show us that our capacity for resilience, our need for connection, our search for meaning, these are things that transcend political systems and geographical boundaries. These are universal human experiences.
It's a really powerful realization. Despite the bleakness that we often associate with North Korea, these stories highlight the unexpected resilience and the depth of human experience that exists there. It makes you think about how individuals, no matter how challenging their circumstances, find ways to hold on to hope and forge connections. What are the things that keep us going, those fundamental human anchors?
It's a really important question. This exploration really encourages us to recognize the universality of human experience. Even in places that seem completely foreign or incomprehensible, the fundamental human drives for love, for survival, for connection, they persist. It challenges us to look beyond the surface and really seek out that human element in every story.
I think that's a great point to end on. If you found this exploration of human stories in North Korea as compelling as we did, we encourage you to subscribe to the show for more in-depth conversations like this. And of course, we'd love for you to share this with anyone else who might find it interesting. And for an even deeper dive into these individual journeys, we highly recommend checking out Barbara Demick's book, Nothing to Envy. You can find a link to purchase the book in the show notes. Finally, as always, we encourage you to be critical consumers of information, especially when it comes to portrayals of isolated nations. It's so important to seek out these individual human stories to gain a fuller and more nuanced perspective on the world around us.